I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Review, where we look at a previous competition piece of mine and have our AI, DesignEye, assess it and analyse it in terms of the principles and elements of design, which is how we are judged in competitions, to give me an idea of what I could do to improve the design, as well as where it met those principles and elements of design. This week we're looking at a design that was called Revealing the Layers. And for the life of me, I can't remember doing this. I can remember doing it, but I don't remember that it was for a particular competition. It's obviously, the notes I've got is that it was for an online competition. I don't think in the end that I submitted it to the competition, because I've got no other notes beside it in my design book, apart from the fact that the parameters for the design. So it was required to be 70 centimetres in width, height unlimited, and it was going to be judged online from an image. And I've talked previously about making sure that when you take an image, it's a nice clear image that highlights the design and gives the judges the opportunity to see into and through the design, so that you get that sense of depth that might be missing when they're not doing a physical judging. So in this design, I've used a placemat as the base of the design onto that, and that's made out of dried water hyacinth, and onto that I've placed a round of banksia with the bark. Then there's on top of that, as the upright, there's a piece of fence post, timber fence post, that's been turned at the top, and you will have seen that I've used that in some of the other designs if you've looked at some of the workings of my designs on the sister site floralartonline.com. And to that I have used another placemat, but it's deconstructed circular placemat that's made of the dried water hyacinth. So I get that circular motion, that spiralling motion, and layers through it that I can open up at the top of the design and bring it down to the bottom of the design. I've added in some packing cardboard, that's the middle section there, some tatami palm inflorescence, some craspedia, some manipulated flax into the shapes, and I've tucked things inside the design, inside the water hyacinth at the top there, so that you have to look in and through the design, and that's the revealing the layers of what's underneath the design. When I look at it now, it's not, I can understand why I didn't submit it for the competition. It's not good enough for a competition, for my standards of competition. So I'm interested now to see what DesignEye has got to tell me about what I can do to lift it into the competition mode. So let's see what the analysis says. Overall comments, first of all, in terms of interpretation of the title, this design clearly and successfully reflects the title, Revealing the Layers. The use of interwoven, braided and textural materials in stacked and partially exposed forms creates a literal and metaphorical sense of uncovering or peeling back structural elements. There is a progressive visual journey from base to top, enhanced by variation in material depth, density and orientation. And that's a pretty good assessment, probably better than I would have given it myself when I first looked at it. But I can see that on first glance that it is interpreting the title. There are layers to the design, and they are revealed in different ways throughout the design. Let's look at very specifically the principles and elements of design and see what the assessment is there. Looking at line first of all, a combination of linear and curved lines defines this piece. The twisted fibres and spiral braids offer a fluid motion, while the upright verticals provide structure and containment. Crisscrossed natural twigs and the angular cardboard contrast nicely with the more organic lines, adding dynamic energy. And I can see that with the tatami inflorescence, which is what it's calling the natural twigs, if I had twisted that even more and given it a real spiral, it might have added to the depth of the design. It also, for my mind, the line doesn't continue through. There's a break in the line, and I'm a bit concerned about that. Form. The form is predominantly vertical with strong linear anchoring and a widening bowl-like shape at the top. The layered approach to surface and structure gives the illusion of inner and outer forms, supporting the concept. That's true to a certain extent. I just think that the top section's got a good reveal of layers, but the bottom section is a bit more haphazard, and I haven't really brought it together well enough, I don't think. So texture, my favourite. Texture is one of the strongest elements here, using woven, water hyacinth, shredded and corrugated cardboard, rough bark slices, soft Cresspedia globes. These tactile contrasts make the viewer want to reach in and feel the layers, perfectly aligning with the theme. Well, that's good. And as you know, if you've looked at any of the other videos, textures are the things that I focus on. That's my design strength, is the contrast in textures. And I'm glad that even within this design, which to me is a little bit flat in terms of its textural contrast, there's really nothing shiny. Let's look at it that way. There's nothing shiny. There's nothing particularly smooth. So I would have to revisit that to lift that contrast even more, I think, than is being analysed at the present time. Space. The design successfully uses negative space between the structural components, particularly in the upper third, allowing the eye to move through and reveal what's within, and that's very true. You can see that quite clearly. There's a good balance of fullness and openness, creating intrigue without overcrowding. To my mind, the bottom half is a little bit overcrowded. There's a little bit too many things happening that are not especially well connected. And I think I would like to have had the top part of that water hyacinth plaiting come down a little bit further. Yeah, the diagonal line where it comes down to the bottom is a little bit too straight, and I need it to be a little bit more curvilinear, to my mind anyway. Colour. Colour scheme is earthy and harmonious, based in neutral brown, soft greens and wood tones. The bright yellow Cresspedia and belly buttons provide small but effective points of contrast, guiding the eye and adding lightness. And I'm happy with that. I might have used a couple more just to give me that spiral line that goes up a little bit more clearly, because there's from the one at the base that is within the manipulated foliage to the next one up, there's a bit too much of a space for my eye. It's a bit hard to travel, to make that leap across. And I would have liked a softer line to take it up to the top. But I'm glad that the colours work in the design. Balance. The design maintains visual and physical balance despite the asymmetrical layering. The weighted base and widened upper section work together to anchor the piece and create a stable visual footprint. It is very stable when you look at it, and it's not overly top heavy. I think it's quite heavy in its interpretation, in that central column and the base are quite heavy, and it's fortunate that the top is bigger and a bit more busy, so that you don't get caught in the bottom 2/3 of the design. Rhythm. A clear flow is established through repetition of forms. Braided elements spiral upward, and Cresspedia punctuate the rhythm in a measured and natural way. So yes, there is rhythm in it. As I said earlier, I would like that piece, the water hyacinth that's coming down from the top to the bottom, to be a little bit more, to be a softer curve, to bring the rhythm down a little bit more. But in terms of the placements, there's good rhythm in the design. Dominance. The central braided and textured structural form is dominant and focal. Subtle colour, contrast and directional cues from the materials naturally guide the viewer's attention here. So once again, it's interesting, isn't it, that in this design the focal point is at the top, and not something that we would normally expect to see in a design, but it needs to be to balance out the very heavy visual and solid base that is within the design that I've used there. Contrast. Excellent use of contrast in smooth versus coarse surfaces, and I would question that because I don't think there's enough in the smooth surfaces. Natural versus manipulated plant material, bright yellow dots against neutral earthy tones. So the rest of the contrast is good, but I would like to see a little bit more in the smoothness, the smooth versus the coarse surfaces. I think there's a lot of very seemingly coarse surfaces within it. Unity. The piece feels cohesive. Despite the variety of materials, there is a unifying theme of natural craft, layering and exposure. All components support the core concept. They do. My feeling is that Unity is one of the areas where this falls down. I don't feel that it is as unified a design as it could be. I think there's too many ad hoc placements of the different types of materials, particularly with that manipulated foliage that is at the bottom of the design. There is another piece underneath the layering, but it's not as clear as I would like it to be in terms of that repetition and of making it unified in the sense of seeing more than that type of material placed more than once. So, the strengths of the design: strong title interpretation with material and structural layering, inventive use of texture and line, avoiding conventional floral forms while still clearly within the floral art discipline, excellent craftsmanship and structural construction. So I just want to go back to the second strength that's talked about there, is that avoiding conventional floral forms while still clearly within the floral art discipline. This is often a question that I get in my workshops about what is the difference. What is floral art? Basically, it is an art form. It is not floristry being creative. It's an art form, and as such, we need to think about how we want to show art, given that we get a title to interpret in terms of plant material generally, not just flowers. So it could be all foliage, it could be a mixture of the two, it could be all flowers and no foliage. So, or fruit and vegetables, they're still plant material. So it's a great way of extending your knowledge if you are already floristry or commercially based into a more creative stream, but you need to remember always that it is an art form. It's not based in commercial resellability, shall we say. Suggestions now. Focal reinforcement. Currently the eye travels broadly across the entire design. Slight refinements of a clearer visual focal point, e.g. one larger crespidea or a more defined void, could create stronger impact. And I think that's very true. I think there is no real... There's a focal area at the top, but there's no centre point where we want to go, where we're drawn, and then we move through the rest of the design. So I do think that's something that I need to work on. And the suggestion of the larger crespidea or a massed group, I've got two within one of the layers underneath and two at the top, although you can only see one in this particular image. But, perhaps having more at the top so that they were out at the top, or a stronger line, a massed group, not a huge mass, but 3 or 5, 3 probably is enough, would create some impact at the top, and then you would get drawn down into the other line that would bring you down and then come back up through the design. So that's certainly something that I would be looking at. Transition area in the middle zone. The central vertical shaft is slightly visually dense. I think it's very visually dense and blends in with the surrounding elements. You might consider lifting some of the finer elements slightly forward or backward to create depth, using slight tonal variation to distinguish the internal versus the external layers more clearly. Once again, I think that second one about distinguishing the internal and external layers is a very good suggestion, and I could use that all the way through the design, because there's just not quite enough difference between what's the outside layer and what's the inside layer in terms of the colours that I've used. So once again, another good suggestion. And suggestion 3 is the top edges. The upper edge of the woven bowl shape appears a bit abrupt. Softening this with a more continuous line or allowing one of the braids to trail or taper could enhance the elegance of the finish. And once again, I think that's true, and I think I saw that when I was doing the walkthrough of this analysis, is that it just needs to be, that line particularly coming from the top to the bottom needs to be softened so that it incorporates that beautiful circular motion at the top a little bit better into the and reflects the roundness of the Banksia slice at the bottom as well. So final overall impression, revealing the layers is a thoughtful, tactile and deeply textural interpretive design. It evokes a sense of time, nature and unearthing that are concepts well aligned with the materials and techniques chosen. With minor refinement to hierarchy and spatial contrast, it would elevate from successful to exceptional. And that's what we want. In the terms of using DesignEye to improve our designs, this is what we want. We want to know what are the little things that we need to change or we need to think about that will lift our designs from the placings or just below the placings into the area that is rewarding in terms of the effort that we put in, but also is recognition that our skill level is a little bit beyond what the standard is in a competition. I encourage you, therefore, to use DesignEye, our AI, to assess your designs. So all you need to do is go to the website, submit your image, follow the instructions there, and within about 24 hours you'll have an assessment back along exactly the same lines as I present to you each week in these videos. It is looked at by a human judge just to make sure that the plant materials have been identified the right way and that it will make sense to you in terms of the development of your educational journey for floral art. With that, I will leave you for this week and I'll see you next time. I'm Kim Bailey and this is Floral Art Review.